Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. The evolving revolution in Egypt is arguably the biggest political development on the African continent since South Africa's democratic elections in 1994. But what does it mean for South Africa, which is now only marginally larger than Egypt as Africa's biggest economy? Keith Campbell joins me today to analyse developments. Keith, welcome to Second Take. In your view, South Africans were fairly slow to grasp the significance of what is happening in Egypt. Why do you think was that?
I was very struck the first weekend of the protests in Egypt. It was already a big international story. I was looking at two of the English language newspapers you can get in Pretoria. And the one did not have a single story about Egypt at all. And the other had a story in Egypt on page 9 or 10. I can't remember which, but that was how far down the priority list it was. Now, of course, at that time, former President Nelson Mandela was in the hospital, and the Nelson Mandela Foundation had made a complete mess of the communications, the information around that event, and there was much public anxiety in South Africa. And the Nelson Mandela story was quite rightly the top story here. But it was very striking that Egypt didn't feature as the second story what you'd expect it to do. I think in part it's Egypt is quite literally at the opposite end of the African continent to South Africa. There's very little mutual knowledge between the two countries, and I don't think at first South Africans grasped just how important these events were, and indeed that they may actually have a significant impact on South Africa itself.
Well, South Africa is being incorporated as the African component of the BRIC bloc of nations. But on a number of indicators, the country's leadership position is under threat. Would you agree with that?
Well, this is the striking thing. South Africa has, for a long time now, been the number one economy in Africa. South Africa is unquestionably the number one democracy in Africa. This position has benefited the country in that it became a member of the India, Brazil, South Africa Dialogue Forum, the three biggest, most powerful economies, democratic economies of the respective continents. And it has helped South Africa being accepted into the even looser BRIC group as the leading African democratic economy, the leading African economy, period, actually. But what has been happening unnoticed is that Egypt has been catching up. Now, if you go back to about 1991, the Egyptian economy in exchange rate terms was about a third of the size of the South African economy at that time. In 2004, the Egyptian economy was about 47% of the size of the South African economy, if you talk in purchasing power parity terms. Last year, again in purchasing power parity terms, the Egyptian economy was 95% the size of South Africa. Egypt has been growing faster than South Africa, and it looks pretty clear for the next few years Egypt will overtake South Africa and become the number one economy in Africa. It is already, and always has been, by far the most powerful military power in Africa. And if this revolution leads to a democracy, the consequence will be that Africa's number one democratic state, militarily, politically, economically, will be Egypt, which of course is pretty much a return to what was the norm for the past 5,000 years.
So Keith, what do you think South African business and political leaders need to take away from what has happened in Egypt?
I think there is too much complacency in too many circles in South Africa. There seems to be an assumption that South Africa's number one position in Africa is immutable and unchallengeable. In fact, it's under very grave challenge right now by Egypt. Of course, the revolution could go badly awry in Egypt. The country's economy could be wrecked. Democracy could be stillborn. But if the Egyptians get it even half right, there is a decent chance that they will eclipse South Africa. The country has undergone significant economic reforms in recent years, and some analysts believe that these reforms are indeed part of the trigger for the current revolution. That is, Egypt became economically more free, but there was no increase in social or political freedom at the same time, and that this caused frustration which finally boiled over in the past few weeks. An interesting digression, by the way, is the events in Egypt suggest that the Chinese development model, economic freedom, political control, is not necessarily the pattern that other nations in the developing world are willing to accept.
Keith, thank you very much. That is the Second Take show for this week. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time for more news analysis.
Led by Martin Creamer, Mining Weekly's bureaus in Perth, Johannesburg and Toronto deliver unrivaled global coverage of the resources industry and the companies shaping it. Creamer Media's Mining Weekly for mining news around the clock.